Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Wrestling Royalty. Welcome back to Give Me a Ho Yeah. And we're here for a Friday night feature. It's been a couple of weeks, but we are ready and raring to go. I know the title says we're going to be talking about Survivor Series tonight. We're going to be talking about War Games in particular, because next week ahead of Survivor Series, we'll be doing a full preview. But we thought there was a little bit more about the War Games side of things. We wanted to have a bit of a chat and in-depth discussion when it comes to the War Games matches in particular, because I think that is one of, if not the most exciting thing that is going on in WWE right now. Lots of different things going on, and we'll get into a few different bits and pieces as well, I'm sure, because it's been a couple of weeks. Let's have a bit of a catch-up. I've seen Mark doing his thing where he's been spreading the kind of news and the rumours that are on social media, news outlets, all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much to our moderator, Mark. Always a pleasure to have him in. Let me know in the comments, what have you been doing the last couple of weeks? What have I missed? What has life been throwing at you? But I also have Sam who's going to be joining us very shortly. But yeah, drop us a comment in. Let us know what you've been up to this week, or what you've got planned for the weekend. Are you going to be watching AEW this weekend, who's got a big live event as well? I'm sure we'll touch on that, because I think there's some plans to do a sort of mop-up show on Sunday, but we'll get into it. I can see there's a couple of comments from Dean, who's got himself all confused, thought Survivor Series this weekend. I actually met up with Dean on Monday as well. We had a lovely Five Guys lunch and a catch-up. A bit of a business deal going on, so watch this space. We'll reveal all very soon, I'm sure. But always good to have Dean in, and always good to have Sam in as well. And Sam is making his grand return, as am I, after a few weeks away. So let's bring Sam in. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm all right. It's nice to actually be at home at 8:30 on a Friday night for the first time in what feels like flipping weeks. But
rock and roll.
Yeah, so it's nice. I think once I run out of energy and money, I'm back. So that's what happens. But funny you mentioned Five Guys.
There's a few wrestlers like that, isn't there?
Yeah, that's exactly like that. I was going to say about
Five Guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, you mentioned Five Guys a moment ago. I had a bit of a giggle with Eddie Edwards, the TNA #1 contender, last night about Five Guys. Well, yeah, cheap plug, WrestleSphere. You can see that and go up when I've got to write it up at some point, hopefully on Monday, and then get it published. But I think we will put this video on because we had a bit of a giggle. But before we did the interview, so last year when I was in Coventry to go and see TNA, and I was there as press. I brought my wife as well. She was my glamorous assistant, and I'm walking through Coventry after the show. And two big dudes go walking past me. And do you know when you just don't have that moment of politeness with somebody? It's, oh, yeah, okay, after you. Yeah, you just do that with someone. And then I kind of turned around, and it was Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards, both walking down the street eating a Five Guys. So I thought, So when I spoke to him last night, I said, do you remember being walking through a dark alley and bumping into an idiot in a hat and a blonde girl, and you were eating Five Guys with Brian Myers? And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. So that was me. He's like,
no, I'm being polite, but I've slept since then.
No, but you remembered it because it was a moment. Like you'll remember he'll remember having a Five Guys in Coventry. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So it was like, and what's interesting as well, because we've spoken before, even before that. So it was just, anyway, we had a bit of a giggle about Five Guys. So there you go.
Did you ask him his toppings?
Did I ask him his what?
What his toppings are on a burger?
I can't even remember. You could tell he was starving though, because bless him, he was proper going for it. Him and Brian Myers, but yeah, that was quite funny. But yeah, that'll be going up on WrestleSphere soon enough. But not the Five Guys conversation. That was for off cam.
That's a freebie for right here on a Friday night feature. But yeah, we've got Daz Reynolds in as well, and says, "Big up. Do you think The Rock will be back?" Well, Daz, we will get into that as we go along here. Lots of speculation going on. A couple of things to bear in mind when it comes to The Rock's schedule in particular. Will we see him? Will we not? It's up for debate. Well, we will get into it, I promise. And Mark sounds like he's going to try and get you the card for SmackDown, which I venture a guess there'll be at least one women's match on for the Women's US Championship, which we will talk about in the future. But yeah, there's a couple of things to say about that, and we'll save that for another week. But yeah, we are here today to talk about the War Games matches at Survivor Series 2024.
It's not how you say it, Andy. That's not how you say War Games.
Well, I was going to say, if anyone wants to have a go in the William Regal way or the Rhea Ripley way, as she did it on Monday, but you look like you're ready to go. So, Sam, introduce it properly.
I can't do it as well as Dom. Dom does it brilliantly, but I will go War Games. Bah! That's what Rhea Ripley did. There you go.
And then, cue Ozzy Osbourne and co doing their War Pigs and all that. It's funny because obviously being from Newcastle, when we say our, we say war instead, but we say WOR. So it's like war kid or war lass sort of thing.
Yeah,
so,
you do.
Yeah. But not in this sense, not that kind of war games. It's not our games. But there are two matches currently scheduled in terms of war games at Survivor Series war games. You've got the men's and you've got the women's. The men's obviously seems to be the one that's more prevalent in the advertising. This is the one that WWE is currently using when it's advertising Survivor Series for November 30th, which, Dean, is next week, not this week. So you'll have to get that 5 guys ordered in again next week, or Papa John's, because I know you're a bit of a Papa John's fan as well. I've also just seen that Norma is in and Hassan is in as well. Hi,
Royalty, wrestling royalty. Give me a whole royalty.
Everyone's in tonight. Yeah, Norma says I can see Bron taking a face-ish turn. Is that like down since day one-ish, but face-ish? I don't care what kind of character he is, just so him and Fatu get it. Yeah, I mean, that moment where they had that stare down, that was really cool. They seem to be teasing Jacob Fatu against a lot of different opponents, and each time the crowd is going crazy for it. So the common denominator is people are really keen on seeing Jacob Fatu do a bit of a singles run as well. So he's, I think he's set for a long time in WWE, and he seems like a pretty cool and decent guy as well. I know he's got a bit of a sketchy past, but people make mistakes. As long as it's not certain things, you can forgive them.
He was a kid. He'll be fine.
Yeah. Dean says, be the booker question. If you could book 5 guys to get it in their prime, faces against 5 guys in their prime heels, who are your picks? Dean, just so we know, are we doing this? Is this like a Survivor Series elimination match, or is this a War Games match? Before we pick that, what I'll do, we'll end on that discussion, because that's a really good question.
All I know is I want a milkshake now. That's all I know.
Yeah, you need to give us a bit of time to ruminate over our answers there. So, if you could book 5 guys in their prime, faces against 5 guys in their prime, heels, who are your picks? Dean, let us know. Is that a traditional Survivor Series elimination match? Is that just a 5 tag match, or is it a War Games match? And then we'll answer it at the end. Right, let's go. Mark says, also, quick reminder, folks, next week's SmackDown is taped. That will be because it's the day after Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, then Black Friday, and who wants to go watch the wrestling show?
Very
good. Yeah, really good. I've seen even people who have been detractors of the company saying the way that they do time off like now is much better than they've ever done.
Yeah,
it's kind of a big thing. It's a little thing, but a big thing at the same time. So, really cool. Daz asks the big question: who is the 5th member of Roman's team? So let's get into it, because you can quite clearly see on the poster, one side seems to have more people than the other. The new Bloodline has 5 members. So you've obviously, you know what, Sam? I'll let you introduce the new Bloodline. And what do you think of this new Bloodline's lineup, including Big Bronson Reed being added in there as well?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is screw you, WWE, for messing up my fantasy booking that I did on the channel a couple of weeks ago. But so obviously you got Solo Sikoa, who, and I don't care what anyone says, I quite like this story, and the fact that he's not quite up to snuff is actually part of the story, which is what people aren't getting as well. Jacob Fatu has just been fantastic in this role. The way he just stands there with his finger out and going, "I love you, Solo." He's clearly having a lot of fun and getting paid a lot of money to have a lot of fun. So I love that. The Tongans have been excellent for a while, and the fact that I think it was their dad or their granddad was blood brothers with one of the Anawais. I do forget which one. So that's pretty cool that they're in the new Bloodline for that reason as well. And where Johnson Reed's not a member of the family, he is of Samoan descent. Yes, he's an Australian as well, but he is from Polynesia as well, his family. So I just think it's inspired booking, and I'm absolutely furious that I never saw it and never came up with it, because I always kind of figured they'd be doing their own thing with Bronson Reed. But when I saw them all on Raw the other day and he did the hand in the air and he did all that, it just looked so natural. And I actually hope he remains as part of the Bloodline even after War Games, because I just think he brings another level of danger to the stable. But anyway, one thing I did predict, and quite a long time ago, quite accurately, was I do believe I said many, many moons ago, Andy, I was actually talking about Jey Uso and Sami Zayn when I said Jey Uso and Sami Zayn will ride again, and of course they did. We always knew the Usos getting back together was on the cards eventually, and I did always have a feeling that the OG Bloodline were going to reunite. And I'm really pleased that they've included Sami in that. Just like that, when the crowd were chanting, "We want Sami, we want Sami." There've been some nice moments between him and Roman Reigns. I would quite like to see a moment where they kind of talk on the same page, like the way Sami and Jey do. I would like to see a moment where they're like, "Do you know what? Look, we were mates, and we are mates, and like we can do this." I kind of like that they've circled back in with Seth, who we're going to get to that. But anyway, yeah. So we've got the Usos, Sami Zayn, and Roman Reigns. We've got the OG Bloodline minus Solo, minus Paul Heyman in the babyface spot, and I think it's really, really good long-term storytelling. This is exactly what they needed to do with the OG Bloodline, because they can still sell T-shirts, they can still keep them as a stable. I'm of the view, this is controversial, but I am of the view that the Bloodline story, including Cody and Sami Zayn, particularly the Sami Zayn Roman Reigns story, is the best story I've ever seen in wrestling. And there's been a lot of good ones, but I actually think that trumps a lot of them, just because of how smart it's really been. Now, I could get very, very granular with some of the things that they've done and why that's smart, but that might be something for another day. But right now, I'm thrilled that they're doing this. I think it makes all the sense in the world. I'm a bit unsure where they're going to go next. I know Mania for a few people, obviously, and the Rumble should be fun too. But I worry about the long term impacts of it, of where it's going to go. But sometimes it's better to live in the moment and enjoy what's in front of you. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I mean, the obviously the big question that's kind of hanging around is whether they'll go down the route of Seth Rollins being the fifth man on Roman's side, because obviously till now he's kind of maintaining that there's nothing that could happen that would ever make him want to join up with Roman, which is quite funny because when you think about it, and I've seen a lot on social media, Seth Rollins was the one who started all this bad blood between them when he stabbed his Shield brothers in the back.
But he's also the one who fixed it, though. It's important to say he's also the one who fixed it.
That is true. But there are some things, obviously, like you can forgive, but you'll never forget. And true. I kind of feel like it's nice to have this grey kind of character where both of them have done some pretty crappy things to the other one over the like the time they've been in WWE. Both of them have been good for the other one at different times. Obviously, more recently, the sort of recency bias is Roman. Obviously, of the last year with Rock was awful to Seth in the build-up. Obviously, very dismissive about him, his title, who he is, his character, all that sort of stuff. So they've really kind of run him down. So I feel like they're also building that maybe at some point there'll be this bigger story between Seth and Roman where they're keeping something in the chamber where they can do a sit-down interview and say, what exactly is it that makes you hate Roman so much now? And you can give Seth that moment to, have a massive speech and tirade against how badly Roman's treated him and he let the company down, etc. He's everything that he wasn't, because obviously Seth is sort of heralded as the workman or the workhorse of the company, and Roman was happy to just do one day every couple of months or few months sort of thing. So I love that story's tangled up here, and it's kind of in the background somewhat because the bigger story is what's going on here. But there's also this other issue where there's only 3 matches 1 week out. There's only 3 matches that has been scheduled for Survivor Series. There's these ones, and then there's the Gunther Damian Priest match. So I expect there to be some matches booked tonight and on Monday, and possibly all the way through to the recorded one on next Friday. But that is part of the problem. Is this is capturing and kind of overshadowing anything else that's going on. I know we've got the Cody Rhodes and we know we've got him against kind of Kevin Owens going on, but it feels like that's in the shadow of this, which isn't helping Cody. So they kind of need to give Survivor Series to this match and then let it splinter off in its own different ways as to how we're going to go. But it can't be the thing that everyone's tuning in for. Before we came on, obviously we were messaging before, Sam. I also was speaking to John, who's been on the, who frequents the comments sometimes. There's some burnout going on with WWE fans right now where it's just not capturing people's attention quite like it was a few months ago. And I know we go through this post-Mania funk, and I think it's not been as bad as it has been, but there's a lot of stuff going on where some people might be attracted to this, like whether it's the Karrion Kross stuff. Some people, like myself, I really enjoy the stuff that's going on with New Day and what's going to happen there. But I think they are missing. There's a chasm starting to open up between the main event and the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, interesting time.
It's getting me down a little bit, if I'm being honest, because it's like, now look, I get it from a long-term point of view. Like the White Six is a great example. Like me and Dom had a conversation about this the other day, because I'm of the view that they haven't dropped the ball with the White Six. I'm still enjoying it. It's still pretty good. I'm still looking forward to seeing where it goes. But like the fact that they've not been on a pay-per-view yet when we've had some pretty big-ass pay-per-views is a little bit frustrating to me. Like, sure, they'll be at Mania. Of course they will. And there might be some good stuff to look forward to at the Rumble as well. But I think you're right. I think part of it is now pay-per-views have been consistently great for a while. I wasn't too enamored. There were some good matches, some good wrestling, but in terms of excitement, I wasn't too enamored with Crown Jewel that's just happened. But I do. This chasm is a great word because it seems to be, because we're having these more bite-sized pay-per-views where bigger things, more important things happen, we're missing the mid-card and the undercard being on there. And sometimes you can tell something's amazing because how it's compared to something else. But the problem with that is it's communicating that you've got the upper card and then you've got everyone else who doesn't matter. And it's like I said to you, I catch myself fast forwarding segments. Sometimes it might be the women's division. Like if Candice LeRae's on my screen, I don't think Candice LeRae's going to do anything exciting or important anytime soon, so I don't need to watch it. But I love this New Day stuff, but they're not going to meet until WrestleMania, I don't think. So it's good storytelling. I'm at the point now where tell me when one of them turns. I don't need to see Otis and Tozawa. This stuff make me care, WWE, because I care about Cody, Gunther, Damian Priest, Bloodline, all that stuff, the stuff you're depicting on the pay-per-views. But for everybody else, give me a reason, because I used to. Yeah. So that's where I am.
But this is a perfect chance, by the way, because obviously we've got Survivor Series traditionally was teams against teams, and you can have the elimination matches. So to me, the whole thing about Final Testament versus Wyatt Six is tailor-made to stick it on here as a multi-man elimination tag match and have that as one of them and elevate it onto a premium live event. Because if you can get these other storylines on a premium live event, it helps create that you should care about this because it's on a premium live event. So to me, if they don't put them on this one, I think there's something wrong on the basis that Karrion Kross is doing great work. Miz is kind of feeding into that. Wyatt Six, since they've come back, people are still into it, but people will get bored if they're not taken seriously and elevated. So
there needs to be stakes, doesn't there? And the whole purpose of wrestling, the whole way this thing works, is you build up the storyline stuff on TV. There's a big blow off and a big twist at the pay-per-view that furthers the story. Look at what they did with the Bloodline with Sami Zayn, and like that moment where Sami got taken out of the Bloodline is still, I just blimey, what a segment, what a moment. Like that, capture that WWE, but you don't need to have everybody on every pay-per-view, but you do need to like, look, I'm not being funny. Like a few months ago, I forget which pay-per-view it was, there was only 5 matches on it. That's not acceptable. That's not good enough. Like even though even though they were great matches, so like dude, like make it last another hour and put a couple of the undercard on there. Give people a reason to shine. Give us a reason to care. It's just a bit worrying because everything else with the Triple H era, I'm a massive fan of, but that is a bugbear of mine now. And it is actually becoming, as you said, I feel like it's now having a knock-on effect with the casual fan. Not so much you and I, But the casual, well, yeah, you and I, because I'm fast forwarding after.
Well, you've got to remember when they move across to Netflix. And yes, it's only Raw for the US, but for the rest of the world, everything's got on Netflix. So you're going to get a chance for casual viewers to go,
yes,
oh man, I ain't seen wrestling in ages. I might flip it on. You might only get 10 minutes of their attention, and you better believe that 10 minutes you've got to have to make the most of it. So I would imagine January, expect stakes to be really high on any programming they put on, because they're going to have to hit the ground running if they want people to keep tuning in and not flood social media with, why am I paying all this money for Netflix? I'm not paying any more because wrestling's on there. So yeah, they'll have to really kind of go for it. But anyway, back to the thing. I've seen Aaron make up the comments. WWE ID faction will be just like the Nexus. I don't think it's a faction. It's just like a sort of program on that one, where they're obviously scouring the indie scene for people to kind of sign them up onto, I guess, like casual contracts for WWE, where they can kind of pick and choose if they're going to use them in the future and let them carry on the indies and build their own kind of brand up. So I think it's a good thing. And what I'm wanting to do is let it go on for a little while first, and then we'll have a bit more of a discussion about it, because they're obviously still announcing names onto who's going to be on it. And I think we're yet to really see what it's going to be. So expect us to have a Friday night feature on the WID at some point. Just, it's early days at the moment. Let's let it play out and go through the pros and cons in the future. The other match we're going to be having a chat about is the women's, and Sam kind of briefly touched on Candice LeRae there. And
now she's doing something, so I'm happy. Now she's in a pay-per-view, so I'm happy.
Yes.
It was an example of when she was doing the Poison Pixie stuff, and it just wasn't flying.
I also think it's probably born from a position that we both know how amazing Candice LeRae can be, and she's just never really been utilised properly. So, fingers crossed this is her getting a little bit of a push now and a little bit of shine in the match. But we are going to go through the women's match, which is set in its entirety. It has a stacked lineup of people. Is it slightly hodgepodge? We'll get into it. We'll go through it. So we'll circle back and we'll go through the men's. Obviously, what if the story so far for anyone who's not been following along and is kind of getting ready for it and watching this in the build-up, I guess we'll be doing a full preview show next week, and hopefully they'll have announced a few more matches. But very much the storyline has been the new Bloodline is taking over. They are very much a case of, we are the only Bloodline. You need to acknowledge Solo as the tribal chief. Roman's come back. He's trying to claim, back his land, his territory, his tribe, etc. And he's realised that he is up against it with this new Bloodline, which is kind of grown in number. We've got Bronson Reed has been kind of pulled in at the moment. Very loose affiliation, I think. I think it's more of a case of he's just a big brute that they wanted to bring in.
Samoan brute, though. A Samoan brute. That's what's so pretty. That's what's cool about it. That's why it works.
But he's Australian, right?
But he's of Samoan heritage.
Yeah.
So, we'll just look at him.
To be fair, the Usos are born in Cali, I think, aren't they?
Yeah.
Roman's from
Roman Reigns Floridian. So, yeah. It's more about, does your heritage, does your family come from the island?
The blood, it's the blood side of things rather than where you're actually kind of from. But I think it's really cool. I think it's a great spot. I think they've been doing some fantastic things with Bronson Reed in particular over the last 2-3 months. His whole thing against Braun Strowman and kind of having that big monster battle, and then going in again with Seth, which they teased before. Now they've gone back to it, and now having Seth elevate Big Bronson Reed, I think has been a fantastic spot for him. Be interested to see how far we go with it, and whether he kind of calls in a favor in the future to say, I helped you out and you knew I'd come calling for my favor back at some point. So we'll see how that goes. The big question, though, is obviously as we wait to find out who for sure the fifth member is going to be, and we'll talk about that in a second. Do the new Bloodline have to win this match to be legitimized, or is there absolutely no chance they're winning this?
See, they won the last one. I think the new Bloodline, the old Bloodline, win this one, and I think they start moving the story towards a singles match with Roman and Solo, where Solo is utterly defeated and humiliated. Now, this isn't a burial, because we'll circle back. I'm not going to go too far into fantasy booking, but I think what happens here is the good guys have to get a win for a bit. Everything has to look good. And then the real power behind the throne emerges, which is The Rock. But I think The Rock will humiliate Solo. Will say, you failed. You were never this. You were never that. I was, and then we get on a collision course between WrestleMania, between Roman and The Rock. I think that's where this is heading. I think the Usos versus the Tongans is probably heading there. But I actually do think Solo Sikoa is ultimately going to be the guy who sees the light and is the one who, I think Roman will defeat The Rock, but I think it might be due to Solo Sikoa eventually. It's a long way away, seeing the light, maybe at WrestleMania, and the entire Old Bloodline reunited. So I think there's a lot that needs to happen in between them. I also think Roman Reigns needs to get another shot. I think everything needs to be going well for the Old Bloodline. Roman gets another shot at Cody. This time it's like no BS, no interference, no nothing. But I do think something has to, because I've been thinking about this. I liked the idea of Roman losing clean and being like, Cody, I acknowledge you. But I'll be back, but I'm going to go at the back of the queue now. But I will be back. But I also like the idea of The Rock now. Because The Rock and Roman can fight each other at WrestleMania without there needing to be a title involved. Because the thing of the tribal chief, all that story they built up, they've made that so important. It's actually more important than any belt. So that means
Which
Cody.
is a problem.
Well, I don't know if it is, because I think it's always with wrestling about the story. It's all for me.
I mean, more in the short term of what that does for Cody or what that does for Gunther, where you've got.
Cody can. I think Cody is still in the main event at WrestleMania. I think Roman Reigns in the Rock main event one day, and I think. But you've also got Rollins versus Punk on there as well, so we have to see how we're going to do it. Let's be honest. Unless one of them gets hurt again, that's where we're headed. But I think that's a great story. I like the idea of Roman retiring The Rock because they've finally got what they want, WWE, which is they've got a babyface Roman Reigns over. Now, and where do you go from there? How do you cement that and make him the next Rock? You have him take down The Rock and be the guy. Like The Rock's only got so many singles matches left in him until he's forever.
I imagine he's probably only got one single.
Yeah, maybe so at Mania, and so that's what That's why I was never sure he'd be in this War Games match. But I think that's where it needs to go. This needs to be Roman versus The Rock. Solo, I do think is a cat's paw. All this is a big swerve, but I think The Rock will humiliate Solo the way Roman did to Jimmy, and just things like that. And Solo might ultimately be the catalyst that helps Roman win, and then basically says, "I acknowledge you, my tribal chief. I was so wrong," and everyone's together again. But the question is, where does Cody factor into that? But I think to answer my own question, I don't think he should that much.
I have a feeling with Cody, his storyline is either going to be is either Randy Orton or John Cena or the winner of the Rumble. But again, the winner of the Rumble could go for Gunther. I just think there's some kind of.
I think Damian Priest is winning the Rumble and goes for Gunther.
Oh God, I hope not.
But I actually think I
think Cena could win it.
Yeah, I think Cena could win it. Well, it's I've got two theories, right? So. One is
let's hold on. Let's just pump the brakes there.
All I was going to say is Punk versus Rollins. I've always had it in my head that that's for the heavyweight championship, but it doesn't actually need to be. It could just be a grudge match, and you have Gunther Priest at Mania or Priest Gunther or some variation.
Yeah,
but there you go. But yeah, I think Cody and Roman need to have one more match. Then Cody and the Bloodline story needs to be over for a significant period of time.
Yeah, well, as Mark has just said, I think Cody should be nowhere near Bloodline for the rest of this wrestling year.
Yeah,
I tend to agree. I don't really see the point of kind of overlapping it. You still need that storyline from elsewhere to carry the rest of the show. Because let's face it, you could have this Bloodline War Games match going for an hour, but you're still going to have one more match, which will probably be about 45 minutes or so. Then you just need other bits throughout for other people to look forward to. And I think Cody Rhodes versus in the short term, Kevin Owens, then probably Randy Orton and maybe John Cena, etc. So I think that's kind of set for the next however long. He doesn't need to get involved in the murky waters of the Bloodline again. There was a question about Oh, yeah.
That's all I was going to say. One more match with Roman. I think it needs to happen. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah. There was a very interesting moment on SmackDown last week where Roman Reigns, after getting beaten down, sat down with his phone and said, "Call the wise man, call Paul Heyman." And it said, "The number you've called is no longer connected." You got to remember, WWE and the writing side of things right now don't do things unless there's a payoff at some point. I think the biggest point of this is, in my opinion, I think we'll see something tonight. We might see something next week as well. But I think there's going to be a scramble to find out what's happened to Paul Heyman. And as Mark said, there's also this continuation where when Paul Heyman was beaten up by Solo and the rest of the Bloodline, he did stamp on his phone and broke it, and that side of things. I think what might happen is they eventually get hold of Paul Heyman, but he might be realigned with either Brock or CM Punk. And I think it's more likely that's the fifth person than Seth Rollins. So we might see a CM Punk back at Survivor Series where he was reintroduced last year and come full circle. And maybe it's a case of, again, I'll do you this favor, but somewhere down the line, you owe me one, whether it be a match or something along those lines. I just think there's a lot of history that you can kind of pull with Paul Heyman here and have that joyous moment where he comes back out, but he goes, "Yeah, I'm also not alone." And
I've got another theory, and it's a bit simpler. But I prefer yours. But my theory is Heyman is shaken after what happened with Solo and just wants no part of it. And he's eventually, I think he's gonna get hold of him, and Paul's gonna say, "No, Roman, I want no part of this. I'm out. I'm done. I'm out. No more. No, sorry, not doing it." But then he'll have a change of heart. And that's when he might bring in a Brock or bring in a Punk or whoever else. But I think it might just be a case of he actually puts himself on the line at one moment. He might be the guy to just grab someone's ankle and look up at them defiantly. Maybe he then goes through a table again. He doesn't take many bumps, Paul Heyman. So it's important that when he does, it's a big deal. Yeah. So I think that the last two bumps I remember him taking were Goldberg doing something to him, and then Solo Sikoa putting him through a table. So, and there were 5 or 6 years between those two bumps. So, I don't know if Heyman himself doesn't get involved in the ring or anything, but just does something to irritate Solo or one of the Tongans, bravely. Yeah. But yeah, there's several possibilities. He'll come back. It's like you say, they've done this with the phone because we're going to see Heyman at some point. The thing is, it's got to be a big pop. And I also think when he does come back out, it's a moment which communicates the heels are screwed for some reason.
I wouldn't mind seeing, as Mark points out, he's normally a heel manager, but let's face it, people are willing to try different things throughout their career. I'm sure Paul Heyman's no different, but I wouldn't mind seeing him join up with Jacob Fatu in some way, going with Roman. He abandoned him. He didn't know where Roman was. He couldn't get hold of him. So there is that kind of thing of you left me to the wolves, or in this case, the werewolf. And and you thought I'd come crawling back to you. It was where were you when I was getting my ass put through a table, defending your honor? Because that's what happened. He sided with Roman. He got beaten up for it. So, at the end of the day, there is that kind of Paul Heyman-esque thing of he's a bit of a weasel. He'll go to where he thinks the power is, and if he doesn't see it in Roman, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to stick around and hope that someone is going to return my calls, and they never do. You're going to move on eventually. Is this what happened? We'll see. But lots of questions going into next week. I don't think we'll find out who the fifth member is officially until the night. I think it'll be a big surprise at Survivor Series. I have a feeling that you'll have to wait a little bit longer to find out. But they'll tease something tonight. I'm sure they will. I think it's a good spot for Sami to be back in. I'm a little bit worried about Jey Uso because I think the crowd is still really into him. Pushing him back into a tag team full time, I think is the wrong idea. But I know a lot of people are into the Usos being back together, yourself included, Sam. So watch this space. I just think he's moved on, and I'd like to see a little bit more from Jey Uso, sort of a la Jeff Hardy, where he comes out of the shadows and is very popular and over with the crowd, especially live. Bless you. We're going to be talking about the women's war games to finish off as well, because the field is set here. And I said they've probably got what you consider all the top women.
It's the Avengers versus it's the Justice League versus the Legion of Doom.
Yeah, so
is what
we've got
this is.
Rhea Ripley, who I guess will be the captain. Which we'll probably get captains matches or something, won't we? Where we get like the advantage for War Games matches either tonight on Raw next week. So there's probably something to look forward to. But Rhea Ripley with a new sort of, I guess, a slightly different look with a face mask like Cody Rhodes or Dashing Cody or whatever he was when he was not Dashing Cody. Naomi, Jade, Cargill, we've got Bianca Belair and Io Sky on one side. And then I like how even in this picture you can't see Candice LeRae, by the way. I think she's on the end and she's just blocked out of view.
It's like I wasn't trying to bury Candice earlier. I was more burying the booking of Candice. But I mean, that picture says 1,000 words, doesn't it? So
you've got Liv, Raquel, and then you've also got Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton as well as Candice LeRae. As you can't see her, but she is there. She's just on the end. But pretty much a who's who on the main roster of women's wrestlers. They've thrown them all into this one. It does, for me, feel a little bit hodgepodge. They've got there by hook or by crook to get everyone involved and on the card. I'm not mad at it because it's a good display of like the top talent. I just wish it had felt a little bit more natural, because to get to this lineup, you've had to ignore the fact that Dakota Kai came back, which I don't know why they didn't just hold that back for a little longer, because it also means like, are they going to play onto Io Sky is going off on her own? Is that going to do any damage to damage control and that side of things? And, you know, are we going to eventually see some sort of heel turn between the tag team champions? Because we've been waiting for it for a while, and I just don't know what keeping Jade I'm
so bored of it. I'm so bored of it. Like, they've been a good tag team, but it's run its course. But you know me. Like, we were sat in LA and I was whinging about how badly I wanted Bianca Belair to turn heel. And when she beat Asuka, like when we were sat there that night at Mania, and when she beat Asuka that night, I was just audibly groaning. Everyone's there going, "Yay, Bianca!" And I'm like the only person there in the crowd, like, ugh. Like, I think I'm just so bored because she's so good. Like, I saw that clip on social media the other day of her just kind of like weaseling away between Charlotte Flair and who else was it? Was it Rhea? And she's like, "Girl, you don't even go here." And there was so much charisma, so much sass, she was so funny. But it's because she was almost a little bit of an underdog back then. It almost gave her a little bit of pep. And now I feel like she's the superhero and not the sidekick. I'm a bit bored of it, and I'd kind of like to go back to that. And I think the only way they unlock that is if they give her a bit of an edge by turning her heel.
Yeah. I also feel this is another one, more so than the men's. I think the heels have to win here, by the way.
Yeah.
I just think for those that are involved on the heel team, they've got both the women's champions. I know the tag teams are on the other side, but for me, you've got both the title holders have to go over, surely. The only way I would see that maybe they don't is if Tiffany cashes in after the match, which would be hilarious, because you have this like brutal War Games match where maybe like Nia gets put through a table, or like she's the one who kind of gets destroyed to put her out, and then Tiffany just cashes in. If she did it halfway through the match, that would be hilarious, because then she'd just be trying to escape the whole time. We've never seen a loss in War Games where someone has gone over and finished the match by escaping, because they always make a big thing about it. They've just never utilized that. Is that a way here where Tiffany wins, cashes in her Money in the Bank, and then just gets out of Dodge and then just like leaves? It's an abrupt ending, but it kind of fits the character, and then you can have Nia chasing her down for the next few weeks, trying to get her, and you know it's kind of like a good storyline to go into. But I do feel like it would be funny for there to be a cash in either halfway through or at the end of this match, because it would give it a nice little twist, because I don't see where else they could go with this.
Yeah, it's not been quite as built. Like, there's a couple of things I'm interested in here. I want to see Nia Jax get destroyed by somebody. I don't care who.
A weekly wish.
Yeah. I've still not fully got over some of the silly things she said during the pandemic. So I kind of, I'd love to fast forward her. I would. but because she's involved with Liv and stuff like that, it's like I can't. But anyway, I think Liv Morgan's fantastic. I think yeah. Oh, I hope you're right, Mark. I tell you now. Me and Jess were discussing Charlotte and when she's coming back the other night. But yeah, and Rhea Ripley like coming back, did not see that coming. You know, I thought she was out for a while. Don't know if that was kayfabe or if things have just changed. Either way, who cares? It's great. She's back, yay, and she looks badass. Just like they are Batman and the Joker who switch roles, and I'm happy to see them do this dance forever, as the Joker says to Batman. So yeah, it's good. But Io Sky's great as well. Just seems a little bit. I think she's there because she's a big star and isn't doing much else, and that's it.
Yeah, it feels strange that they've introduced a SmackDown exclusive, what seems like a SmackDown exclusive women's mid-card belt, and I don't know if they're just waiting to let that have its moment to introduce then an IC like version, because there's not an awful lot going on for Raw if everything's over on SmackDown and they've got 2 titles. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
And the way they're going about it with that mid card, like sticking it on main event, I only found that out today in a WhatsApp group with you and Dan. So
I genuinely didn't know that it was
me neither.
Main event. That feels like burying it straight away.
Yeah, it's like, Jesus, are you trying to make it the next 24/7 or WWE Speed? Like, do you want me to care? Then don't stick it on a rebranded Heat. What are you doing? Like, anyway.
But we'll talk about that as the tournament progresses. We'll have a bit of an in-depth chat about the Women's US Championship title and the tournament and everything that's kind of gone into it and how we got to that stage, etc. But yeah, we have been speaking about the War Games matches tonight. We will be doing a preview show next week, and I hope you can join us for that. And hopefully there'll be some more matches to talk about, because I don't want to have to just go into these again. But we'll be another week down the line. We'll also get to talk about Gunther and Damian Priest as well, and their feud so far. Dean Asters are at the top of the show to fantasy book a 5v5 War Games match of people in prime when they were prime faces versus prime heels. I made a quick note on what I said. I did see there was a comment. Let me scroll back to find it. Someone did already answer for them. Where are we? Yes, it was Mark. Cena, Cody, Rock, Austin, and HBK versus Triple H, Undertaker, Kane, Roman, and Brock. Love to know, is that Undertaker like Ministry of Darkness Undertaker? Is that what we're going with? Like, is that his prime heel, do you reckon? He was probably most devious then. Difficult to say.
Oh, can I? Ooh.
I'll tell you what, I'll do mine while you're just thinking the rest of yours.
So are we fantasy booking our ideal team?
Oh yeah, as in like just anyone through any part of history can join. Yeah. Okay. So I've got faces, and the reason why I've gone for this is because I think it's just the kind of like the different eras of WWE that have been like top faces. So I've gone Hogan, Rock, Stone Cold, Cena, and Bret Hart. So it's a very like over the top faces. And then versus heel, Shawn Michaels, Andre the Giant, Triple H, Roddy Piper, and Brock Lesnar. So you've got a couple of like beasts in there. You've got a bit of charisma with Roddy Piper, and then you've got that sort of like heel DX and like Shawn Michaels when he was like just a complete asshole, basically. And I personally believe Triple H is possibly, well, in my opinion, is the best heel of all time, because I grew up absolutely despising Triple H, and now I realize he's actually a really nice guy. But you hated him, you wanted him to lose every time he was on. And when he wormed his way through, you were like, Jesus Christ, he's never losing his title. So yeah, I that would be my picks. Sam, what do you reckon?
I think I'm going to have to just go with the thing I wanted to see when I was a kid, and I couldn't do it because WWE were too cheap to buy out the contracts that they needed. So I'm going to go for what the invasion angle should have been ultimately at the very end, which is Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker, Kane, Triple H. Who am I missing from that? HBK, perhaps. Is that everybody? Undertaker, Kane, Stone Cold, Triple H. A bit before his time, isn't it, this? So against
the invasion, yeah.
Against Sting, Goldberg, Flair, Hogan, and I'd say not Nash, but maybe Nash or Scott Hall. I'm trying to think. So basically, WCW versus WWF, because I feel like that's what we got screwed out of many years ago, and there's in a parallel world where the invasion angle was good. So if you're listening, WWE and TNA, let's have a do-over. Let's do it right, because I think
it just you saying that though, it just reminds us that we never got and never will get Taker versus Sting.
I know, that's the. And there are times as well it could have happened. And do you know what we never actually got as well? Which seems so obvious now, but you'd be like, because they look like each other when the aspect ratio changed. But Stone Cold and Goldberg, like that would have Goldberg's never been the best wrestler, but
yeah.
Something about
we got close because we had the whole like Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg, and then Taker, and then
not the same.
Yeah,
it was good. Like, because I'm a massive fan, not so much of that era of it, but when they had Brock and Goldberg had their do-over in Florida, I think it was 31 or 32. That was great. That was brilliant. Yeah. The story was great. Match was exactly what it needed to be. And people who go Oldberg, they forget how good that was. We just let's forget. Although at the moment, I'm not best pleased with Stone Cold, The Undertaker, and Kane, but we'll leave that.
We'll leave the politics at the door for now. Dean put his picks out there: Hogan, Rock, Austin, Cena, Taker. So not too dissimilar to mine. Versus Brock, Triple H, Kurt Angle, Macho Man, and Gunther. Oh, Macho Man. See, I always struggle to see Macho Man as like a heel per se, because I just think he's like
too lovable.
All my best memories of him is like when he was a face rather than a heel, but each to their own. That's the wonderful thing about these discussions and about wrestling, is that everyone has their own thoughts and opinions. And nice to see Gunther in there as well as on the heel team. Mark confirmed it was Ministry Taker that he was thinking of, but Dean's Taker is Judgment Day Taker or Taker SummerSlam against Brock. Wowzers. Mark was clarifying that he'd only have Brock in if it was a life where well, I mean, let's face it, like to get the ones that we've got there, there would have to be something weird happening. Dean, I think, was agreeing with the Triple H side of one of the best heels ever. Austin Rock benefited from the greater the villain, the greater the hero in Triple H. And then there was some things going on there. HBK super kicking. Oh yeah, this is where right at the beginning of the match when they're still DX buddies and they have the triple threat match that HBK just super kicks Triple H straight out the gate and out the ring, and then Cena's face is amazing because he's just like, what? What's the match? Was Fab against Hogan? Yeah. But even then, that was like kind of like a fight sort of over Miss Elizabeth. You kind of see where he was coming from. Let's face it as well, like Hogan's a bit of a douchebag, so he is a big douchebag.
He had been manipulated as well by I've forgotten her name, Sensational Sherry. Was that her name? He'd been manipulated by her. So at the end, like when he reunited with Miss Elizabeth, that was one of the best face turns in living memory. That was such a moment, such a great moment. Her actually jumping the rail to kick the crap out of Sherry was brilliant as well. It was so good.
But yeah, that's it. We're going to wrap up there. And we just want to say thank you very much for joining us. I know we obviously had a couple of weeks away. Life gets in the way. We've got plans and things like that. So thank you for bearing with us and thank you for coming back and joining us tonight. We do miss you when we're not here. And we kind of feel like we should be doing it. But as I hope you can all appreciate, we've got other things to do as well. I'm in the middle of marathon training, and Sam's been doing work for Dom. He's been doing work for the sites. He's got life, and it just finds a way to get in the way as well. So we do appreciate you being here, and don't worry, we've never forgotten about you. And there is plenty of content. You can always catch up with Dan Hargreaves on Monday nights. Give me a yeah. There's also quite often Sunday socials as well, and you can join in quizzes and whose nipple is this and things like that. So.
We might post something. Sorry, Andy. I was going to say we might post something week after next because I'm going to Hull to spend some time up there. So I might post something funny of us all getting drunk or something. So that might be a laugh. Might be.
Well, there you go. Keep your eyes peeled. The only way you can do that is make sure you follow everything on Give me a whole social media, WrestleSphere social media, and there's, of course, Wrestling Royalty social media as well. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up because it helps us with all the weird algorithm that YouTube's going through, etc. And we can continue the discussion and make it bigger and better and have lots of other people doing it. So, yes. Who's that? Give me a whole We are doing a quiz this weekend. I think it was meant to do it last week. We moved it to this week. I think it's so you can have a bit of a chat about AEW, right? Full Gear this weekend.
I think we kind of like when we do it because I'll be there this Sunday.
Yeah,
I think our bless him Anthony tuned in last week and we weren't there because we were doing it the week after. But but anyway, yeah, we'll be there on Sunday. We usually kind of cover everything that's kind of going on. AEW will obviously be a big talking point because Full Gear will have just happened. So yeah,
so subscribe.
Yeah.
Hit the notification bell and you'll find out when they're going live. Keep your eyes peeled and make sure you join in the fun and festivities on Sunday as well. But make sure you join us next week. We will be having a chat, whether it's myself and Sam, someone else will be here somehow. But yes, make sure you join us next week.
I'll try and be here. I'll try and not make any social plans at least, but it's we've got some stuff going on at the moment where we might need to kind of like jump in the car and go somewhere. I won't say what, but well, hopefully, I should.
But join us for a full preview of Survivor Series, where we'll hopefully have a load more matches to talk about, or at least 3 more matches to talk about. But we'll see where we get on. If you are watching wrestling this weekend, please enjoy it responsibly. I enjoy it wholeheartedly. Join us on Sunday. If not, we will see you through the week. Make sure you say hello to us. This has been Sam. This has been Andy. This has been Wrestling Royalty and Gimme a Ho Yeah. We will catch you next week.